Welcome back to another episode on the Coffee with Craner show. I'm so excited to welcome Diane Reko. She's the CEO and chair of the board of directors at Reko International Group, Incorporated, located in Lakeshore. It's a manufacturer that's been in Windsor since 1976, has been around for 44 years. Diane is also a board member on the Windsor Essex Economic Development Corporation. She also started the Detroit chapter of the Private Directors Association, co-founded that. She's also a University of Windsor graduate, and also Reko International donates to many events and organizations in the community, including the City of Windsor, Georgia Odette Leadership Symposium. So I'm very excited to welcome Diane to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Lyndon.
Absolutely. So every show I start with a question relating to coffee. Diane, where would you say is your favorite place to get coffee?
Truth be told, it's probably at a nice cafe somewhere in Europe, but pre-COVID, my stop was Tim Hortons in Emeryville. Not a fancy location, but great service from someone named Janice every morning. And since COVID started, I've been using my own Keurig at home. So
definitely, we'll have to on the show. We'll give a shout out to Janice, the barista. Where in Europe? You mentioned Europe. Where would your favorite place be?
That would be a toss-up, but I would say some of the best ones were probably in Barcelona.
Okay. Very interesting. Coffee's great. It's great wherever you go.
Yes, that's true.
Exactly. So my first question here for you, Diane, is relating to STEM. When did you first become interested in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics?
Yeah. Well, truth be told, if I had to pick, I would have to pick only portion of STEM as my real interest. In school, I loved all kinds of subjects, and math was among my favorites, more so than, say, the science and the technology. I'm kind of an era where it wasn't as predominant for women. We didn't have programs like FIRST, which I've been involved with for a number of years now as a judge, and I think is amazing. I think it probably would have brought me to the world of STEM a lot sooner than life and circumstances have. Yeah, it's always amazed me, and I think what my educators created for me and my family as well is created me as a lifelong learner. I love to watch webinars and learn about the new technologies, see what our people are doing, the innovations that they come up with. I think that's just great. So
how would you say your graduating from the University of Windsor and in business, how does that help you while you're working in the field of STEM? How is graduating in business applied to that?
It's good, to be honest with you. Again, going back to the era when I graduated, I didn't really know much. I had taken some programming courses in first year at a different school. And what I really wished I'd had when I graduated, which I didn't because it wasn't part of the curriculum at the time, was Excel. That's what I ended up using pretty regularly and still continue to use a lot during my career. Yeah, I think the instructors gave me a broad vision of kind of things that were going on in the world and different areas that we could pursue. And certainly that has been a good foundation to where I am today in terms of knowledge and the ability to learn how to learn, right?
So Diane, if you were you were not involved with Reko, what type of career do you think you would be in?
Oh goodness, that's a good one. I haven't thought about it much lately because it seems like a big leap from this point and this point in my life. I do love travel. I had actually hoped to be a travel agent and own a travel agency when I was graduating many years ago. But I was working part-time for American Express, and they were getting in their very first computers. And it was called the Sabre system. It was sponsored by American Airlines, I believe, at the time. And I was just amazed by the fact that all these things that used to be manual and handwritten could now be done electronically. And it was so easy. And I remember thinking, this is going to change everything, and obviously it has. So my dreams of owning a travel agency kind of got dashed right around that time when I realized that the way things were done was not going to be the way going forward.
Very interesting, and things have definitely gone in your favor in your role as CEO and chair of the board of directors. But moving into your career, I want to talk about a moment in your career that you found very challenging, unexpected, and what did you learn from that moment?
Mm. There are many, obviously. I've been in the role for a long time, but one that came to mind as you asked that question was when we made a transition of leadership in one of our divisions, our Concord division. I was part of a group, and the recommendation was that I should travel with the new leader to communicate with the customers and be able to let them know that everything was okay with this transition so that we didn't create any problems. And so I ended up doing things which were very outside my comfort zone. We did a lot of traveling to cities all over the United States. We met with people who I'd never met before. I was very intimidated because I really am not technical. I have a business degree, and was very concerned that the conversation was going to go towards, quality issues or technical issues. And what I learned is that I didn't need to be stressed. So many of those suppliers were just really happy to actually have the president of their supplier there to say, you know what, if there's anything you need, I'm here. Here's my card. How are things going? And you realize people are just people, and yeah, they have technical issues and they have things that they want done. And obviously, I had that technical person with me who could answer those questions. But they also want to know that that you care about them as a customer, and that you respect them and you value their business. And that was a really important learning for me. And I also learned that I really am not comfortable driving on really busy tollways. Had a really frightening incident with a rental car in Houston on the Sam Houston tollway. But other than that, it was a good trip.
So Diane, right there, you mentioned being business minded and having to you're in a field that's very technical and filled with science. And you mentioned you brought a technical person with you. How have you kind of diverse yourself into that, or been able to overcome that gap in knowing business, and now you're working in basically a STEM industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's like everything with leadership. You're never going to be an expert in everything. So you may as well surround yourself with people who are good at things that you are not as good at, and rely on them, right? Whether that's finance or the technical side, or sales and marketing, whatever it is, make sure that you have those people around you and work with them. I know teamwork is a important thing, and I think as a client, you're never going to be upset to hear, you know what, I'm not the expert on this, but I'm going to bring in the expert. You don't have to be an expert in everything, to lead.
Do you think you need that general knowledge of everything, and if you want to be a leader, or what's your thoughts on
I
that?
think it's helpful. I certainly have spent a lot of time over the years talking to people, asking questions, and trying to learn as much as I can. I have a very small portion of the knowledge compared to my team, but yeah, I mean, there are some fundamental things that you have to get familiar with, I guess, if you want to be an effective leader. It's tough to go in and make decisions when you don't really understand all the elements of it.
Very interesting. So I want to ask, in 2011, Reko International went under a massive corporate change. What can you tell us what happened, and maybe what did you learn from that time?
Yeah, we probably were having a little bit of hangover from the whole 2008, economic crisis that we went through. And by 2011, things were quite bad for us. We actually lost close to $10 million that year, and had to sell off about 7 of our facilities. We had to permanently lay off over 60 people, I believe, and it was just a really terrible time. We had to do it, obviously, for the survival of the business. we had kind of grown to a level where we couldn't sustain it with sales, and yeah, there were just a lot of things that kind of had built up to that point in time. It was a big leap, you know. We committed to our lenders that in 90 days we would move our mold division into our facilities in Lakeshore, where we are right now, and co-locate them in a building with our automation division. And they told us after the fact that they were really a little bit skeptical about whether we could actually achieve that. But I really had a truly amazing team around me, and we were able to do it. One of the things I learned about it is that communication is so important. We had sessions with all our employees, but I'll tell you, the rumor mill is rampant. You know, I mean, we had one session in the morning, and by the next session, people had already received texts from people outside the organization telling them, oh, this is what I heard, and da da da. And so we had some really interesting questions through all of those sessions. And it was difficult to tell people what was happening. Probably one of the worst points of my career, for sure. And it's one of those things where you say, you know, if you go through that, you never want to see that again, you know. So we got our balance sheet in order, and made a specific plan to return to profitability, which we have. So it was a really it was like one of those transformational, you know, kind of near death experiences is how I would describe it, you know, where it changes you forever. And yeah,
Wow.
we got through it though.
Like,
Yeah.
wow, like having to sell off 7 different buildings, huge layoff. What is Reko International doing now to kind of prep for something that may or may not ever happen like that again?
Yeah, well, we're always paying attention, right, to what's happening. And I think it's not that we weren't paying attention back then, but I think that we were missing some pieces of the puzzle and some information. And so now a lot of our time is spent saying, okay, what's going on out there? How do we need to adapt? How do we need to adjust, right? I mean, this COVID world has created a lot of changes for a lot of people and a lot of businesses. And you can just sit back and say, I can't wait for this to be over. And maybe you'll get left behind, maybe you make it through, you know, instead of saying, okay, what do I have to change to adapt? One of the situations that we've started doing is remote tryouts. So we have customers in the United States, they couldn't cross the border, and normally they would come over, have lunch, and go to a mold tryout, watch the parts being shot, and, you know, buy off on the mold and then go back home again. That wasn't going to happen through COVID. So we figured out, okay, let's get a GoPro hooked up. Let's use Microsoft Teams. Let's set up a session. And, you know, the people actually were like, wow, this is pretty cool. Like, they saved a lot of time and money and travel. I mean, the one guy was saying, I feel like I finally got out of my house. I think it was in quarantine too long. But it really is a chance to say, okay, that's not going to work. Let's try something else. We've got to adapt, right? We can't just say, oh, well, we'll just wait for, you know, they need their molds, they need their parts, but we want them to be satisfied. So they had a chance to visually inspect, and then we shipped the parts, and everything was good, and the molds are gone. So it's a kind of a new way of doing things. But that's part of what you have to do to make sure you don't fall into the trap of just saying, okay, well, things are going to come back to how they were, because sometimes they won't.
No, very, very good insight.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk a little bit about when I was researching into Reko International, I noticed that there's a big focus on families. Why is this value so important in your organization, having a strong respect for the employees and their families?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that started with my father and my mother, very family focused people, who were, you know, just instilled that in us. Probably came from their generations before. If I look to their parents and their siblings, I certainly can see that strength of family all the way through. But I think that in the business, and why it's been important to me too, is that, you know, I've been a working mother for much of my career as well. And so I appreciate the challenges of trying to keep balance between work life and home life. And when things get out of balance in your life, whether it's work and home or your diet or exercise or lack of it, bad things tend to happen. So trying to achieve some balance for people is really important. And I personally, I love knowing what's going on in our team's lives, right? So I've got a team member right now who's in labor and delivery, so I'm so excited for her. But it's those happy moments that they have and the sad moments. And so, before COVID, I mean, we were doing family picnics and holiday parties at Christmas time and golf tournaments and all those things. And COVID has kind of put them on pause, for the time being. But it's really important, I think, that we see each other outside of work a little bit and are able to see each other more as people, not just as coworkers all the time. So.
Yes, wow. Though, I mean, engagements like that is so important. And what other things in the corporate culture at Reko International do you take strong pride in?
I think, the events that we've done are really, really valuable. Town halls where we, again, before COVID, we were barbecuing steaks a couple times a year for our employees and then having a big sit down together. We've got an employee assistance plan, which I think has been a really important feature of our benefits plan that allows people to call and get anonymous help if they are going through something, whether it's a marital issue or problems with their children or anything really, legal issues. Those plans are pretty wide open, and we've been really adamant as soon as we learned about them and put them in many years ago of keeping that in our plan, because I think it's important that there's a place for people to go and get help. Because again, if you're out of balance outside of work, it makes it hard for you to be happy and to perform here too. So.
No, that's great that you have all those benefits for your employees, and they feel happy and welcome and engaged with your organization. I want to jump over to talking about students and newly graduated students. What advice would you have for them? So let's say there's a student and he just started their full-time job. What advice would you share with that student?
Well, I guess before starting, I would say don't be afraid to take a lower level position, what they call like working your way up. I think that sometimes we graduate and we think, okay, I want to run the place, or I want to be in charge. And it takes time. I spent a lot of years here even before I moved into leadership. And there's a lot of things I learned along the way that were really important that would have probably I might have missed if I had just jumped right into leadership. But I think that I heard something from a speaker during the automotive news women event that I participated in last week. Her name is Carla Harris, and she's with Morgan Stanley, an amazing speaker. If you can find something of hers on YouTube, it's worth watching. But she talked about perception, about how important it is that you might have a certain capability or strength, but if people don't perceive you to have that, it's not going to help you very much. And I'm not suggesting you go bragging about all the things you've done, but I think it's important that you make sure that you make people aware of their perceptions, or ensure that their perception of you reflects what you want it to perceive, what you want them to perceive. For example, she said, make a list of the three adjectives that describe the organization that you're part of, that that they value, that they think are important. And then look inside at your own strengths and capabilities and see where they overlap, and make sure that you spend time demonstrating that you have those capabilities, that you bring those strengths to the team. Because it's great to say, for example, I'm an amazing speaker, but if there's no speaking role that you're participating in, or it's not important, it won't be perceived as all that valuable. So I just thought that was pretty cool. And obviously,
it is.
Yeah. And listening. I mean, I think what you're doing, Lyndon, is fantastic. Asking questions. I mean, there's so much you can learn from other people. I think every networking event I've ever been to, being able to ask somebody a question and hear what their perspective is on it or what they think has educated me so much through my life, continues to. So it's a great place to start, even when you begin.
Wow. Wow. No, that's the whole thing about perception, I think, is very interesting. Making sure that you know whatever you're doing is what you want people to see in you. Wow, that's very important. And I do want to give a shout out to some people in the comments they're saying hello to you. Tal Sudner says hello.
Hi, Tal.
We have Greg Carr. He says, I've worked for Diane for 25 years. Good friend, went to school with your father and all through grade school and high school.
Aw, that's so nice.
And then we have Kevin T. McCarthy. He says, killer steaks. I think it's barbecue, just saying. Like that. So lots of your employees have tuned in today, and I really appreciate your time, Diane. It was great speaking with you and learning about your career.
Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation too.
Yes. Thanks so much, Diane. Stay safe, and I appreciate you being on here. We'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.